Hello, everyone. Welcome to Center for Conscious Kids. We're here live in the Specially Produced Network podcasting booths and studio. I'm here live with Lauren Lee.
Hi.
Hi, Lauren. Lauren is an environmental sciences major at UC Davis, and she's a consumer awareness advocate. And I wanted to bring her here on the show today to help us really discover and understand how we can become more deeply and more authentically consumer aware. Thank you for coming,
Yeah,
Lauren.
thank you for having me. Yeah. So, pretty much like I lately now like going to college and kind of like for a while now like I've really seen how like as like a generation or like a human being like I want to be like more involved with the environment, especially like when you live in like suburbs or cities, like you kind of sometimes become less attached with nature and the environment. And a lot of people are usually they feel more closer to urban cities or they feel more closer to nature. And I feel like I'm kind of a person that's like right in between. Like I really enjoy the urban city because like that's like where a lot of people are, like that's where a lot of creativity and like a lot of mixing of things happen and like kind of like really innovation happens. And then at the same time though, like I really enjoy nature because like there's less people, like you see what the world actually looks like without humans like tainting it and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like in this podcast, like I just really want to talk about the ways in which like you can be aware of your consumption and like how little things in our society like we can slowly build like to a better lifestyle, because I mean that's what happens like all the time. Like things happen slowly. It's not all in one night. And pretty much for the rest of my life, like as a career, like that's what I want to do. Like I want to educate people rather than like people aren't at fault or blame them or be angry with them, that like probably not probably people aren't doing the best way. And I mean like I don't think anyone has the best way to live at all because everyone's different, and but at the same time we can take steps and like or approaches of being more sustainable. And so like for some examples, like pretty much is like what it means to be a conscious consumer in
Yeah.
ways in which like you want to like in our society like we always consume, like animals, human beings, like everything, like every living thing consumes things, whether it be like material for their shelter in their home or food. For humans especially it's like clothing, and now it's like electronics and like a lot of different things. And I think it's really important to understand like we've almost become disassociated like what we are buying and what we are bringing into our own lives that affects us. And I think there's a lot of cases where we really don't think about like greater or deeper things on a daily basis. And I think like as humanity is like so much more advanced than where we were like a century ago, like it's now really more important for us to understand like what, where, and why things are easily available to us and whether or not we should use it and how we should use it.
Yeah, what drives our experience and what drives our thinking about why we choose to buy something to consume. Like I don't think a lot of times we recognize that a consumer is a person who consumes or has consumption of items, whether that's food or water or physical items that they use during their everyday life. They don't recognize how that is. And I know for me personally, in my home, I haven't bought anything in a long time for it, and I'm like, gosh, it's time for some knives that actually work or some forks because they're like I have three left of one kind and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that really does impact it because like, okay, if I buy new ones, then what do I do with the three old ones? And how do I recycle them? And how do I don't just throw them in the trash anymore and put it in the landfill. Like, what do I do with stuff that's obsolete? It's been there. I mean, I haven't bought silverware in 25 years. But at the same time, maybe they're supposed to last 50, you know? And what do I do? How do I buy the next set that will last 50? And that'll be my last set.
Yeah.
right? Or something like that, right? And I agree with you because we brought in something too. I have a bottle of water that is plastic, right? And I, I have to say I didn't buy it, but somebody in our family did, and it was amazing. And he's an amazing person, and we love him. But um, this doesn't do very well because it's only 500 milliliters, and I do have to send it through recycling. Now
Yeah.
you, I know, had some good ideas, and you brought your water bottle and you refilled the water from where we get water from a well that's nearby in our county. So we're using very little carbon footprinting to get that water. It's alkaline water. It's fresh. It's not. It is filtered in such a way so that they can serve it to the public. But outside of that, it's still very much live water. And so, how do we do this? When this water came all the way from Italy, which it tastes amazing and it's awesome, but it does have a huge carbon imprint because, and it's probably now bottled somewhere in America also, but that it still was made somewhere else outside of San Diego. And what do we do about that? And how do we keep recycling even recyclable stuff like plastics or glass? And is it better like to buy, if we're going to buy bottled water, do we buy it in the glass?
Well, I
And
mean, it's just like I think the number one thing what if I've learned from other people and like my classes and things is that like um even though you are choosing to buy, bottled water, like the thing is it's like having your own like one water bottle that you yourself like purchase that you can reuse like like this like like that you can reuse like anywhere you go and like can carry it and you can wash it out and then it's like it's clean and like you can like keep washing and reusing it
right,
is so much better than buying like packs of water, like whether it be glass or plastic.
right.
And like I know that there are some companies that like if you like I can't remember what the name of the company is, but like sometimes what they'll do is you'll send them or like they'll have places where you can go to refill food containers or water or like different things without having waste. Like I know there's a couple I think on the East Coast or the West Coast where they now have made a wasteless store.
Wow.
So like all of their produce, all of their products are 100% just there and you come in with your own containers, your own sacks, your own bags or whatever and you buy from the pound or what it's marked as.
I see.
And so there's no plastic waste, there's no like boxes, like there's no packaging, like just containers of what they hold and then they get it from the distributors, they bring it to their store, and then
They hold it in that container.
they hold it in that container, and then once that material or whatever they had like is bought out or it's done, then they like wash it out and they like just you know.
Repurpose it. Yeah.
And so like I think that is really the part of it, part of the future, but not necessarily all of it.
Right.
Um
Like you'd have a kind of container or a baggie for seeds or nuts or dried fruit or something like that. And then you'd go and get the amount that you want and then weigh it and then you'd pay for it that way.
yeah.
Okay. And then you'd empty that bag out in home in a bowl or something and then you'd recycle it and bring it back to the store again.
Yeah, or it would be like a close sack or like something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
There's a whole industry
yeah,
that we haven't made yet.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, I just don't think that like I know people want to buy bottled water because it's more convenient, but at the same time, like if you really think about it, though, it's like the amount of water now, unless you don't have good quality water,
Yeah.
like I understand,
In some places it is. It's hard to
like
get
and
it.
that's really hard and that's really difficult. So I mean, but for the people like me and you or other people who have the accessibility to good drinking water, we really should not be buying bottled water for any reason at all. And Like that's not saying that it's necessarily bad. It's just like if you really think about it, like you save money, you also save the environment, and I feel like that's a great incentive because everyone's like, well, I want to save money. And I'm like, well, if you keep buying like packs and packs of water bottles, you're not doing
Yeah,
that
because
much.
it's not just the packaging around the water bottle, it's also the packaging that holds the whole crate together. So
Yeah.
there's that plastic around that, or the cardboard that holds all the bottles so they don't fall out of the plastic container.
Yeah.
And then there's probably even larger packaging, pallet containering, that happens to go on the ships or in the trucks.
Yeah. So like, and then I mean, it's like not even like that. It's like also think and like to get away from the bottle thing, but it's more of like, I mean, there's just little things that you can do that really adds up. And like a lot of people don't really realize this, but now it's kind of a bigger thing now where it's like if you go to a restaurant, before you even sit down, you should honestly tell the waiter that you don't want a straw.
Yeah.
That's like a huge thing that's going on. And like a lot of people are like, well, straws keep, because like if a waiter holds your glass and their thumb hits the side of, your thumb, like, people are like, oh, it's hygienic. And it's like, no, it's not hygienic. It's just a way that like companies are making that happen. And like they're giving you expense that like, first of all, they don't need.
Yeah.
Second of all, you don't need it. Why do you need a straw? Like, if anything, yes, kids need straws, but if anything, if a kid's young enough to drink water, like you should bring their own like sippy cups or their own like
Right.
drinking things
Right.
for
Or
them to
even if
have.
the elderly have trouble sipping too, they make durable straws that are reusable. So those can
Yeah.
also be helpful too for people who do have difficulty drinking
Yeah.
in a typical way.
Exactly. So I mean, it is. I think it that in itself is really important because it's like, okay, so how many like customers does a restaurant have in a day?
Right.
I mean, a pretty good sustaining one probably has about like probably like 500, something like that, depending on the type of restaurant it is. And if you put straws in every single one of your drinks, and just think about that, like that's already like 500 straws. It's like 500 plastic little things that are first of all hard to recycle,
Right.
have to be processed, have to be driven somewhere by some truck
Right.
to go get recycled for what? For you to drink water out of a cup and a straw for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and that to me is like something that needs to be associated, is like just the little things. Like it's not even like about the big things, it's honestly about the little things that really add up, because the big things are really important, like being able to recycle everything that you have and like all that stuff, but at the same time it's like these little industrial things. And like that's why I want to go in the industry, because I want to help companies become more environmentally and sustainably friendly while saving money and bettering their company.
Absolutely. I mean, just the thought of about the water bottle concept, I think we also buy water bottles so that when we go outside the house or travel in the car, it's there accessible to us. And I think we got so used to it for several decades now about carrying around bottled water, which is a fairly
I mean,
new.
it's like sliced bread.
Yeah, right.
Like no one thought about bread being sliced, and now it's like the thing. Now if you buy a loaf that's not sliced, it's like, "Oh, this is fancy bread." And it's like, "No, you just cut the bread." Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? I mean, it's not a really big deal because like, manufacturing, like they make it so easy now, but I mean like it is the same thing. It's just like now it's become such a normal thing to
Right. And
see.
we get so used to it, and then we just pitch. And hopefully we pitch it into a recycling bin, but then we have to use more resources, more energy, and more consumption on the planet for even recycling that one bottle that you drank 500 milliliters from, or half a liter from. Whereas I do notice many people carry around the recyclable or the canisters of water, so your own water canteen. But the thing is people are so used to the water bottles and pitching them, they leave them everywhere.
Yeah.
So we're so used
Because
to
because like the idea of a water bottle
is
no
yours.
longer, it's no
Yeah,
the disposable water bottles is you are,
it's not
it's
yours.
just it's associated, it's not yours.
Yes.
When you put like that's why I put stick like or I put things like on my water bottle to identify that it's mine. If you customize your water bottle, like if everyone like
Yeah.
creatively like if you see hydro flasks, like that's like the big thing. It's always been the big thing. It's always been a big thing in Hawaii, and now it's a big thing in many schools. And you'll see all like all these people with hydro flasks, and then you put stickers on them so you know that they're yours. And like if you like put time and effort and money into customizing something, you're going to take good care of it, right? So
Right.
you're going to take good care of your water bottle. Like you're going to remember that I can't leave my water bottle,
At school or at work or
Exactly. But like a
in the
plastic
cupboard.
little thing that you just bought for $150, like you're like, "Oh, I forgot it like on the
Right.
bottom of my seat. Oh, I left it in my car." Like you have no association of it being yours at all
Or taking care of it.
or taking care of it.
Right. So I thought that was a good thing to bring up in the sense because we really do we do disassociate from a lot of things that we don't believe we have to take care of.
No. Yeah. And honestly, like if everyone could like honestly think about it, like about what they do in their daily life and associate themselves with the fact that everything they do like affects other people and other things, like that can take away a huge like you are now living more sustainably and more aware.
I agree. Like even in our household, we enjoy tea, and so um, my husband is Asian and he loves tea from Asia, and it's oolong tea and black tea and green tea. And it comes in packaging, which is very typical to certain areas, but not typical to like an average American, where the tea comes loose in loose flakes, and you put a little bit of flakes in the bottom of the teacup, and then you fill it with hot water. And most of us are used to bagged tea, but that bagging actually has a tremendous amount of waste. Not only in the boxing, and then in each individual packages, you got to rip it open, and then you have that whole tag, and then the whole bag itself, and it's a tremendous amount of waste
Yeah.
related to just one dose of or one cup of tea as well.
Yeah. Or I mean, I think the best one for me that I've seen lately is, I'm on a college campus, so everyone drinks coffee, and I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. So like that's a different story. But the thing is that it's like, if you ever see at Starbucks or at any like Pete's Coffee or like some other like coffee restaurant, if you have, you have your cup and you have a lid and it's a to go, right? Like that old cup already is a to go. Like you're gonna dispose of it. It's not yours. And people now are now bringing their own coffee, like mugs and like canisters
It's
and stuff
awesome.
to now refill. And so then that's why they sell those because it's less waste for the company as well. But also is that there's a splash guard for your
Uh-huh.
drinks, and I actually looked it up and I found out that it's called splash stick. It's a splash stick. So, like those little like green things that go in your Starbucks coffee, those are splash sticks. I just found that out. I was like researching it
Oh,
the
those
other
little
night.
stir sticks, but
Yeah,
they cover up
they're
the
like
hole.
stir sticks, but they're actually like supposed. So like if you stop hard in your car, like your whole drink doesn't go like like it
Flying
doesn't
out.
like drip down or fly
Yeah.
out. Or like when like intern, you see them running with like 16 coffees, it's not
Right.
spilling all over them.
Right.
Like so those things are actually so bad because they're so small that it is honestly you would have to get, a full table of them to recycle properly. And I mean, I haven't really gotten to. I really want to take a recycling class or like this or it's like a waste management class, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like they how you process different types of plastics and how cardboard to plastic to polystyrene to everything, like a bunch of different types of materials, like have to all be gone through, and it's a really expensive process. And a lot of people don't realize this, but like you can't, like there are some water bottles that you just cannot recycle, and they actually have to throw them in the waste because there is not enough recycling places near where you live in order for that to actually be worth something.
Wow.
Because the amount of gasoline, like, in the article, like I was watching for the like, splash sticks, it's like for your coffee cups in the UK, like I forgot where he was, but he's somewhere in the UK, and he was saying how there was only 2 recycling plants near where he lived. and he said the amount of coffee consumed within like those cities around him, probably most of those containers are going to be thrown in the trash because the amount of the plant waste programs, they only take in certain plastics.
Hmm.
So if certain cups aren't made out of that plastic, they're going to be thrown in the trash in landfill.
Wow.
So it's
So
not
even when we throw it in a recycling bin,
you
we're
still don't know
you don't know if what you threw in there is actually going to be recycled based
unless you
upon where you're
research
at.
it. Unless which most people don't, and
Okay.
sadly, part of me like does not because I don't live in San Diego anymore, so I don't really know. Um, but yeah, for most of the time, and a lot of times, a lot of plastics are a mixed blend too, because it
Wow.
depends on. There are so many things that go into marketing, like it's actually insane. Like the texture of how you hold a water bottle, why some water bottles are thicker, thinner. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And like for
Leaching plastic into the.
bleaching plastic,
Yep.
I mean, there's all these different types of things, and so I mean, just the unnecessarily waste factor of little things that you really don't need at all. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
And you were going to share just a little bit about how parents can help children with their toys and stuff. What were
yeah.
you wanted to
So,
share about that?
unnecessary toys. I think, I've babysat a lot of my life, and I realized that children, especially parents, like when they have a brand new baby, like they get all of these toys from every, grandparent, every aunt, every uncle, every friend, like everyone, because like they're like, I want the baby to play with my toy that I bought them. I think people like have a little bit of an ego boost when that happens. But
Yeah.
the problem with that though is that these children really have all of these toys and they don't use them all.
Yeah.
And then when they get older, they become when you try to get rid of kids' toys, they are really upset because that's a possession of them. Because they realize, because when kids, psychology, you go through different stages of
Right.
childhood and development, and at one point or another, you become attached to actual objects, and you understand that, oh, you go beyond that, like my mom is my mom, my dad is my dad. Oh, this is my sibling. This is my home. Like this is where I sleep. This is where I go to the bathroom. Like, you start making attachments to things and then they start making attachments to toys. And what happens is what I've seen is that kids will have all of these toys and they won't realize that they only play with like about 6 or 7 of them
Right.
religiously,
Right.
like all the time, like this is my toy.
Right.
And but when parents are like, "Oh my gosh, there's all this clutter, like there's all these things and you don't even use them," like, and then they like, try to like take them away or give them to other kids and the kids like, "No, that's mine." Like if you have a kid understand that like what theirs is really important and that you can take care of them, and also it also helps the parents because I have no idea, there has been so many times where I felt so bad for the parents because like it would be so neat, all the parents make this beautiful like it's all organized and there's all these boxes and the kids are just exploding like throwing toys all over the place and it's just a mess and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to clean this up now with them and teach them that it's like this is where things need to go and like
Right.
they're like, well, I want to play with it in the next 5 minutes. I'm like, well, okay, but you're not playing with it now, so you need to go put it back.
So how do
And
we help them understand like to have less wasteful toys like.
so I honestly think, in my opinion, especially when you um taking kids to a toy store is great, but it also shows them like how much toys. I don't know, like kids need toys because they need to be stimulated and they need to grow and learn and stuff. But I honestly, like, I beg parents now. I'm like, if your kid like really wants a toy, you need to ask them why they really want the toy. And a lot of times it's honestly because they want to be like their peers and they want to fit
the
in with their
the
peers.
toilet that their friend has.
What I mean, their friend has. And so honestly, I think parents need to start rearranging it. It was like, well, instead of having what everyone else has, like maybe you start the new thing that you have something else that's different that's actually really cool. And
Yep.
and honestly that's really hard, but at the same time, I think when you have a baby or when you have like young children, like honestly try to tell like people around you like, hey, like if you decide to get us a present or something, like don't like, maybe like, a zoo, like if you want to take our kid to the zoo,
Right.
or take our kid to the park, or you know
Have
or
experiential learning.
experiential learning, or even to the point where it's like, you know painting, or like art, or like learning things, rather than like just toys that are like kind of just trendy toys that like people just decide to buy because they're like, oh, that's so cool, like I have to give this to this kid. It's like, you know and
Right.
also learning what the kid wants. Like I babysat a kid, and he loved dinosaurs. Like he loved dinosaurs so much, and he actually knew more about dinosaurs than anyone I had ever known. I was like, wow. And he was saying these, very scientific names, and he was so in depth with dinosaurs that I mean, I think him having toys of dinosaurs and having new dinosaurs and expanding his knowledge is like is so much better for him
Yeah.
than, buying him, Bob the Builder, when he like doesn't even like Bob the Builder, you know what
Right.
I mean? And like,
Or you get past age
or
3 and it's no
yeah,
longer important.
yeah. And so things
So
that are
timeless toys.
timeless toys are really, I think, are unnecessary, and they don't cause clutter and things like that. And also that if kids who don't like to play with things a lot, I think the importance of like, if you don't like this toy anymore, maybe we should give this to someone else.
Yeah.
And then the kids are like, wow, like, well, I don't want it to be taken away, so I'm gonna play with it. And then they
Right.
become a great appreciation. It actually has a use.
Yeah.
Um,
And repurposing too.
yeah. And I think another thing too is like, for parents to do, like when they go out to eat, is that they should never teach their kids that they need, that if the kid is not hungry, the kid should honestly learn that they have to learn that lesson, that if you're not hungry, then we're not going to buy you food,
Right.
because then you're not hungry. And so then the kids are actually more in tune with their bodies on what they want to eat, rather than meaninglessly eating, you
Right.
know?
Right. Or sharing plates, that
Yeah,
concept. Yeah.
or sharing food. Yeah, exactly. And I think too is more of like, um,
I think many parents nowadays also bring, because of the food likes of children, that a lot of times they bring food for the kids when they
yeah.
go out to eat. But you're right, in containers that are not throwaway containers. I think we really struggle as a country to deal with takeout.
Did you know most countries actually don't do takeout?
Yeah.
Like most European countries are like, what? Like when America, like they'll know if you're American if you go and you're eating at a restaurant, like, oh, can I have a box for this? And they're like, they give you a weird look, because they're like, usually, because the meal in most countries is very traditional, and is very like, you come to a place to eat, you
Right.
are fueling your body, and then you leave. Like that
Right.
is the meal,
You don't
not,
take home
oh,
another meal.
oh yeah, can I have this for like later? And they're like, no. And honestly, that makes a lot more sense, because then you because like, why should that restaurant even be a restaurant if you're gonna take their food and you're not gonna go back to them? And so
Right.
it's honestly a business ploy too. But I
Yeah.
mean, but it is traditionally like something like that. While in America, it's like, oh, let me eat in the car, let me eat everywhere, which is totally fine. I think that's like our culture. But at the same time, I definitely do believe that like, if you aren't hungry, don't eat something just because you feel uncomfortable not eating with someone.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't go out and have burgers and fries anymore for a long time, but I was thinking, if I was that kind of person, I would now like take a snack container of some sort, and I'd go like to, I don't know, In-N-Out Burger, and I'd say, can you put my fries in this and the burger in this, instead of wrapping it up? And I bet they would do that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's really harder for other, especially, you can't do fast food. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
They're
Like,
like, no, we can't put it in that
no,
container.
because honestly, there's actually like sanitary problems.
Yeah.
Because if they put it in a container and you didn't clean your container, and then you sue them, like,
Right.
there's things like that. So I
So
mean,
we have some ways to go to work out some of these issues.
honestly, fast food is just like,
It's not good
no,
for you.
let's not talk about fast food.
Okay.
I really don't want to talk about fast food. Yeah, no. Um, but yeah, I mean, but the big ways in which you can become a more conscious consumer is like food containers, like stop eating out, stop like buying things, or going to places that have plastic knives and forks that actually are like real
Yeah.
places to eat, because what are they going to do with that? They're not going to wash them. They're going to throw them away. And like
Right.
honestly, it's just kind of a waste. And some companies think it's actually cheaper. And I'm like, depending on how you do your management and how you do things, yes, it can be. But and at the end of the day, you might as well just wash them and like,
But it's
you
only
know,
cheaper maybe for that person or that company and not
yeah,
necessarily for the whole world.
yeah, exactly. And then composting food,
Yeah.
like that's a huge thing, and a lot of people like don't know how to do it. I still am like kind of shaky on it. It's really hard for me to do in the dorms, but I've actually heard of a girl doing compost in our dorms once.
Wow, you could do it for like the whole floor.
No, you can't do
No.
it for the whole floor. No, you can't do it for the whole floor.
Not in the
No,
laundry room?
and no,
Oh,
no,
darn.
no. Um,
Maybe next year.
you should also buy what you need for sure.
Buy what you need.
Don't
That's
buy
a
what
novel
you
thought.
want. That's really hard. That's always really hard.
Yeah.
Especially like since, I'm 19 and like I love shopping. But it like sucks cuz like you want to be a conscious consumer, so it's like you gotta kind of take a step back and be like, do I really need this? And you're like, and if you're like, no, and it just looks really cute, then you better just like should step away. Like,
Yeah.
and if not, I've actually found for me, which is like been the most rewarding, is thrifting. Is like if I really need something where I'm like, oh, that looks so cute, like, oh, that'd be so cool to have, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I actually go to thrift stores and now I look for my items that, like, I potentially could need that's actually cheaper. I'm actually reusing something that someone else didn't want and now gave back, and now I want it now.
Right.
So it's almost like, so then now for all my clothes now, I actually, like, now I thrift all my clothes because I get money for my clothes, and then I also, if someone wants my clothes, then they'll use it, and
Right.
they're repurposing my clothing
Right.
for whatever they need, and then
Right.
they'll probably do the same thing.
Right.
So thrifting honestly is so big because like now it's something that you want. Like I really been looking for a bigger jacket for me to wear during the winter, and I actually found one. I found one for really cheap at a thrift store that someone no longer wanted, and now I'm like, well, look at this. I'm not paying a big company again for this. Like, when there's already something out there, like no one wants it, and now it's there for a cheaper price, and I'm
Right.
reusing that
Right.
material, so it doesn't seem like it's now in a demand. It's just like
Right.
now it's just something I reuse. And don't gift food. Really, like just don't gift food. Like unless you know 100% they are gonna eat it that day, don't gift food. I have no idea. There are so many things I see in other people's pantries. I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like someone gave me that, and I'm like, like if you like just don't
crackers
gift
and
food.
stuff like that, because I know in our pantry we have stuff that's over a year old in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
Gifted
I
food.
just don't think people should give gifts that, like, I don't know. Like, unless you know you're gonna use it right away, like, I think you should, like gift things that actually are, like, I don't know. It gifting food can be really scary because if they don't use the food, then it's kind of like a waste.
Right.
So unless you are actually gifting food, like, that are going to be used, like, right away, like, I honestly would not gift food.
Yeah.
I would say invest in companies that are seeking sustainability and fair trade. So, like being aware, conscious companies, like, CCK, being aware of what foods are in season. So, like, stop buying strawberries, when they're not in season, or stop, like it's hard, but like, a lot of farmers know how to rotate crops and which ones are in season and which ones aren't going to be in season.
Yeah.
And honestly, the demand for food, in different aspects, like, is very hard. And like, you actually become a greater appreciation of the season of food because you're like, wow, like my favorite fruit's in season. Now I get to eat this all season. And then like, you move on. So you appreciate food more.
Right.
And
I think our bodies were meant to take it that way as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it helps the environment. It also doesn't put a pressure on farmers too to have the most
to grow
demand
things out of season.
Yes, to grow
Yeah.
things out of season, and also cause harm to the soils and stuff. And so I mean, like, honestly, whenever you go out to shop, to consume, to eat, which I mean is like all the time, but to just become more conscious with it, because how much you do, like, you may not think you're impacting the world, but you are, because you might think you're just one person, but the thing is you're one person with the rest of the billion.
Correct.
and seeing each other as a whole rather than as an individual is actually way more uniquely like approaching the situation rather
Yeah.
than that. And living minimalistically, or
Or
at
simplistically.
least simplistically, and in a way where you buy things that you only need, even though like creativity sometimes doesn't necessarily mean you that's simple. Like I love art and I love things like that,
Right.
but as long as it's a conscious decision out of like, why do I need this, or what would this do to my home or to me or to other people,
Right.
is so much, more. And so it's really complex, but I think the more conscious decisions you're making, the better it is.
Yes.
And once you're becoming a conscious consumer, now you're like, wow, like where did this come from? Or
Right.
like, oh, am I gonna actually use this tomorrow?
Right.
Or is this a long-term purchase or is this a short-term purpose? Is really
Yeah.
important.
So we move beyond meeting our immediate needs and what I need or what the other person in my immediate environment needs, and looking at the whole big picture
Yeah.
of how it's created, how it's distributed, and then how I'm using it or consuming it. And then what do I do with any of the waste products that are involved in that?
Yeah, exactly.
So looking at the whole cycle of that product.
Yeah. And knowing whether or not you can handle that too,
Hmm.
because um a lot of people like don't like to cook. And you got to see like, well, why do you not want to cook? Like, and like I know you kind of become a better person because I mean, um meeting people a lot, especially in college, like you understand that people are all trying to figure themselves out. And so the more conscious you become with your daily actions, the more conscious you become for who you really are too.
Right.
So you're like, wow, like I really when I'm really sad, like I'll start buying things that I really don't need, and that's because I'm trying to distract myself from my actual problems. And like once you become not only conscious in your consuming, you also now like start looking at your behavioral, and like it can go so much farther than just like, you know, what it means to be a conscious consumer, because now you're consciously consuming and you're also like learning more about yourself and
Yeah.
your life.
And your own patterns, but then also the patterns of others. And when we stop putting dollars into things or paying for things that don't serve either ourselves or our larger groups or our communities or our country or our world, then it starts impacting the way producers make it.
Yeah.
And it starts changing it. So, like, I know the kombucha industry, a lot of times they're making larger batches and making draft counters, even at grocery stores, so that you bring your bottle and you fill it up and they charge you per ounce or per milliliter of the liquid. And I think that's really fascinating because if we had water dispensaries of clean drinking water in schools, in restaurants, in grocery stores, and people could come in, I don't know, you pay 5 cents or whatever, and you get your water and you fill it up, then you're used to getting your water filled and you don't have to carry around all this other wasteful products, and you get to refill anytime you want. And then this is allowed to and accessed for everybody to have and enjoy with the least amount of waste.
Yeah. I mean, I think water becomes a little bit more complicated because people like argue over the fact of what, water should be free,
Yeah,
and all that stuff. But I mean, like, yes, like, I think especially, like, I think that it is really important to be a conscious consumer and realize that I think people decide to choose things because it's easier to do, or like like
correct,
it takes less brain power.
correct.
And honestly, there's sometimes where I think people starting to start just like educating themselves to better not only themselves but also other people. Like if you're gonna go to college, if you're gonna go to high school, like if you're gonna get a master's degree, or if you are constantly wanting to learn about things, I think being able to know what you are buying and where it comes from and how it got to you,
Yes,
or like why it's in front of you, is extremely important because a lot of people like learning about history and how like how bit like cities were made, or how, different people migrated in certain areas, or, different like cultural things. And,
Right.
people are so invested in that. I'm like, but do you even know like where your water comes from? Like, do you even know like,
Where your
what's
food on the plate
yeah,
comes from. And
exactly.
yes,
And it's honestly really interesting to think about because you don't know. And so finding out is also very intriguing too. And, like, yeah,
absolutely. And we get to teach our kids about it.
yeah.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it was an amazing adventure, understanding all of that aspect. And I really learned. I mean, I think we all disassociate from things we don't know or don't understand or feel we don't have time to look at. But I certainly am going to come away from this podcast looking at what I utilize and how I utilize it and what I order and I don't know, all these different aspects I think are very important to start to reduce and recycle or repurposed waste.
Yeah.
And I surely will look at it very differently from now on. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Problem. Thank you for
Have a
having
great
me.
day, everyone.